One question I did have for you, and I know a lot of people are wondering, is how you manage your funded accounts, right? Okay. Do you merge them all? Do you copy them all? Or what's your setup?
So, literally recently, probably like the last week, I started merging some of them. I don't merge them all because it's too much risk exposure. But back before, I used to just trade them separately. So I'll just go on each account, and because most of my trades are limits more time than not.
Okay.
So I would go on each one, but now it's sort of like I'm linking one or two together, like one or two funded accounts together, another two funded accounts, and then the challenges, same thing. But even then, I do sort of it's linked, but I do it manually as well because I have different funded accounts for different risk. So you got to bear in mind that, like I said earlier, when I do start receiving more payouts, that's when I'll probably unlink it, and then I'll go more aggressive on that. I might risk a bigger percentage, and that's how I'm able to get the bigger payouts. Do you
ever think about trying to scale, like get on a scaling plan or anything, or do you literally don't care?
Recently I have, I'll be honest. But the reason why is because I want to get a little bit less conservative. Because obviously the good part about being an aggressive trader is you can also do conservative. But a conservative trader might find it harder to be aggressive. That makes sense?
Yes, that makes sense. Yeah.
So I'm able to tone it down from aggressive to conservative. So yeah, recently I was thinking of it. Trying to, right now I've got $800,000 or something in challenges, and it's been like 16 days and I'm still like near enough break even. I'm just floating around.
Okay.
One of them is funded actually, so it's like the funded trader one, that one, when I was funded. But yeah, the other one I'm just conservatively, because obviously it's a bigger amount now, I'm going to trade it conservatively, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And they're all linked together. But yeah, that's how I go about it. Just same thing.
Definitely. So in terms of like choosing how you risk, rather than it being like, I don't know, this particular prop firm might have more drawdown, so therefore I risk more. It's more based on the payouts you've got.
Yeah.
That's how you decide it.
It's basically like the more I abuse the more payouts I get, the more I abuse the account, if that makes sense.
Hey, bro, at the end of the day, like I said, fair enough. And people will sit there and have their opinions, but if it works, it works, right? Yeah. If it works for you. I did have, luckily, because we obviously got to run this back, I did ask people, like, if you could obviously sit down with Rahat or ask him any questions, what would it be? So I just wanted to make sure we answer some of their questions, just because obviously we have that opportunity that most of the time we don't get. But now I got to find it. Some of them I think we've already covered, to be fair. Or thankfully you've already covered as well. But knowing my luck...
Too many notifications for you.
Right, you know how it is, obviously.
I don't know.
You know how it is. What are you talking about? You got more questions than me, I swear. Okay, so we talked about obviously what he risks on challenges versus funded. Oh, actually, no, we haven't. So what is your sort of process for challenges versus funded?
Right now, because like I was saying earlier, I've got that pot of money on challenges and verifications, I risk more.
Okay.
So I risk a little bit more. But then when I get to funded, obviously, like I mentioned, I tone down the risk. First payout is always aiming for 1 to 3%. And then typically speaking, I'm aiming for 3 to 5%.
Yeah.
After that. And then, depending on how I'm feeling, my mood, that's when I start getting more aggressive, and that's how I'm able to get the bigger payouts.
Of course. So like challenge verification wise, is it like 1%, 2%?
1%.
Yeah.
Sorry, challenge verification. 2%. 2%. But here
is it based though on your strategy?
Yeah,
so you know your strategy in terms of like the risk to reward and the data you have. Yeah. It has a higher strike rate.
In general, it's 2%, but sometimes I do risk 1% and make a buffer, and then I'll risk the 2%.
Okay. Yeah.
Just depends on how much. If I'm doing like just 200k account, then it'll probably be 2%.
Okay.
Because
but it makes sense off your data. So like versus someone like I've given advice before where I've said 0.5%. But that advice is for someone who is like scalping and doing the small pip stop loss, and they have higher losses. So it gives them the psychology-wide breathing room not to stress, because otherwise, if you take like 4 or 5% losses, in drawdown, and you're scalping every day, 1% risk, that would be stressful. But if you're not,
you're gonna hit your max daily in like a minute.
Well, that's one thing I want.
In and out.
Exactly. Yeah. No. Exactly. That's what I mean. Especially if they don't have the rules of like 1 or 2 trades a day, for example, then it just gets dangerous.